Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Two Average Joes. I think the one we're going to do today is going to be very, very interesting. We're going to be involved not only with a serial killer that people may or may not heard of by the name of Jerry Weingard, but we've also got an interview with the young lady who is a survivor. One of three people that we know of that absolutely survived all of this. So this is a totally different angle. And Dean and Deneen, well, let's talk later there, but y'all guys really did a great job. And Robert, you've watched it, and what do you think?
It's pretty remarkable that this woman survived a run-in with a serial killer. Most women who do run in don't survive, but pretty fascinating stuff. We are tying this together partially with the Michigan murders, or we're trying to figure out how it overlays. I believe it's probably a Venn diagram of sorts where we can't determine. There was so much killing going on in Michigan
That is a fact.
60s and the 70s. And, one of the things that they blamed on John Norman Collins, which this episode is not about, is that the killing stopped after he was arrested and incarcerated. That's not true. The killings continued throughout the state of Michigan. Okay, now whether we can tie him to Weingart or some other person, we don't know. We know of at least three serial killers, if not four or five, that were running in that area of Michigan during that 10 or 15, 20-year period. So, again, Deneen did a great job, and Dean also, and I'm sure this will be a great product by the time it's done. But
That's right. Let me give everybody a little bit of overview. Dean is our producer extraordinaire. He's been watching our videos and he said, "Hey, Two Average Joe's has got a lot more professional. We can all thank Dean. Give Dean a round." And second, because of this, and this is very important to point out because we've been very lucky on this. This interview was a little bit tough to get, and we had to be very careful. And I don't think that this interview would have happened if we did it in this format with four people. And as a matter of fact, I don't want to steal all her thunder, but without Deneen, I don't think we have this interview. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think both her professionalism, the fact that she made friendship with him, being a female, they were able just to talk things through. They got it. And I'm very, very fortunate because I got to tell you something. Without Dean and Deneen, we don't have this. But for people to think doing interviews, especially when victims are easy, you can guess again. Because she was very nervous, but when you watch the video, you're going to be proud of her. So, Dean, give us a little bit. I think you kicked off the show to start off with. How did it all begin?
Yeah, we kind of just do an introduction of a person by the name of Gerald Leroy Weingart. Now, let me just say real quick that everyone pronounces his last name differently,
Yes.
and I don't know that I'm pronouncing it correct. And if it's not, I mean no disrespect to the surname or the family.
Yeah. We didn't say him.
Gerald,
We just said
pardon?
his family.
Yeah. So real quick, we do an intro, and just to tell you that Gerald grew up in Niles, Michigan, graduated in 1959, and then went over to University of Michigan as an engineering student. And his first year there, things got a little crazy. He raped a blind girl and robbed her boyfriend and was sentenced to 9 to 15, I think.
9 to 30, I think.
Is it 9 to 30?
I think
Okay.
9 to 30 years.
But what's interesting about that whole case is, and what got me started on this was a lot of people told me, well, Gerald, even though he was in Ann Arbor, he wasn't around during the co-ed killings. And it kept bothering me, but I ended up getting a piece of paper from the Michigan Department of Corrections, which I will show you right here. You'll notice at the bottom that paper says that Gerald was paroled December 1967. What does that mean? He was out and about during the co-ed killings, with the exception of the first one, Mary Flazer, who was in July 67.
And
So,
tell them about a little more paperwork we got from the police officers at that time.
are you talking about the Wexford?
Yeah, where they had suspected him of the co-ed killings almost
Okay.
from the get-go.
Yeah, and again, I had a kind of an idea that I was going on here, and I needed help. I'll be honest with you, I needed a lot of help, and I just want to take a second and say this. I approached Two Average Joes last year with my ideas, and I was accepted without question, and that meant the world to me. I was trusted up front with my research, and you don't find that anywhere today. And I just wanted to take a second and recognize that to everyone for doing that. That meant a lot.
Yeah, and here's the interesting part, just for our listeners. I wasn't all that interested in Jerry Weingart at first. We're talking, right? Me and Dean are talking.
Nor was I. Nor was I. I was like,
And then all of a sudden, you're
Yeah.
like, oh, this guy's. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Other episodes go. Very
Yeah,
interesting. Actually, he's there at the beginning of Computer Service. We'll discuss that later. Very interesting individual.
So to answer your question, Joseph, we did a FOIA search on an incident from Wexford County, Michigan. And much to my surprise, we got a package, I don't know, 300-400 pages. I don't know how many it was, quite a bit.
Yeah, a lot.
And an extreme heavy redaction, to the point that I had black ink on my fingertips when I went through the page. I mean, little exaggeration there, but it was extreme. But down near the end of the pack, much to our surprise, we found where we had evidence that Weingart was a suspect in the co-ed killing time frame.
And they mentioned that. I mean, it's in there. That's not, we didn't, there's no mystery. They say that they were thinking about that.
and that's in the
Didn't make
redacted stuff that you got, right?
Yeah.
Pardon?
But they were open about that one.
That was in the redacted
Right.
packet that you got, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, it just so happened that they missed the redaction of that name on that particular page, which gave the whole thing away.
And they got some other places where they listed some stuff. So it's obvious. And again, we're going to do a couple more episodes on this, do some overlays, kind of show what we got. It's a very interesting situation. And it goes back into what Robert said earlier in this one, for all the killing stopped, or it was all John Norman. No, the police didn't think that.
No.
So
Yeah.
you made first contact though, right, Dean, with our person?
Yeah, well, boy, sometimes you just get a blessing and you don't know how or why, but it first started going back to that Wexford County FOIA package.
Mm-hmm.
One of those pages, and we're going back to look again to find it, but in one of those pages, there was a paragraph, and I think it was 3/4 of the way down the page in one paragraph only, that mentioned the fact that one of the investigators had found that a woman had escaped a year prior. I think that's how it was. Not a year prior, but several years prior. Would have been 74, and this package was representing the time frame of April 1979.
Yeah, but there's a lot of that going on, just bouncing around time frame.
Yeah, now
the way it was written.
Yeah, in that paragraph, the name was redacted, of course. So I knew there was someone out there, but had no idea how to find them. And one night I got a hit, very obscure, on Facebook. And I'm like, that can't be, there's no way. Well, I personally don't trust the profiles on Facebook because people are getting copied and so on and so forth. But anyway, I just figured I'd send out a message, which I did. And in about 2 days later, I got a hit back. And the woman said, yes, it's me. I'm the person. And within 10 minutes of our texting back and forth, she FaceTimed me. And I have to tell you, I met one of the sweetest,
Yeah, she is.
Mhm.
kindest, down to earth individuals that you could ever hope to meet. And we started talking and putting things together, and things got a little bit nerve-wracking, I think, on her end, because this was all new and she was facing something that was huge.
Mhm.
And then that's where I needed Denine's help.
Mhm.
Mhm.
This has to be something, in my opinion, that if it's going to happen, it has to be woman to woman.
Yeah.
And Denine, I guess I'm going to just let you take it from there, if you would.
Yep.
Let me say this before Denine gets going, so that it's not looking biased. I did not get to listen to the whole interview. Only thing I did was tape it and walk away. But it was real obvious that that's what she wanted in the brief time that I got to see it. That she wanted it to be Denine, girl talk, whatever y'all guys called it. And I do believe that. And I really want to emphasize, without Denine, I don't think this interview happens.
That's right.
I ended up calling her and talking to her, and I told her it was going to be girl talk, just her and I, just talking and stuff. And we did set up an interview at one point where Dean was going to meet with her and stuff, but she got very nervous. I mean, this is something that happened 50 years ago that she's kind of buried for so long, and now it's coming to the surface. And I told her not to worry. I said we can do the interview, just her and I, over Zoom, and that's how it happened. And she is such a wonderful, wonderful, kind soul. And I really don't know. I made a friend out of this whole thing. I mean, we're still talking back and forth after the interview. She said, "Oh, I forgot this." And she told me something that Jerry said to her. And it was, he asked her, he said, "Sheesh, you should have been standing out there in a bikini." So you can tell what kind of mind frame this man was in at the time.
Did he say you should have been or you shouldn't have been?
You should have been.
Should have
Because
been.
she was in jeans and a fringe jacket and
Right.
a gauzy top and stuff like that. But he said you should have been standing there in a bikini. So you can tell the state of mind this man was in. But this woman, I mean, she is such a lovely soul. She really, really is. And when you watch the interview, you'll be able to see that. And she's just amazing.
And here's what's really, for those that are about to watch this, she didn't have any problem with her using her face and her voice and stuff. She did not want her name, so do not ask us what her name.
Right, exactly.
We're not going to.
And we respect that.
Right. And in future references, just because people are listening, so I'll say it. Look, if you ever have a situation where you want to talk to two average Joes, talk to any of us, we're willing to do it, and we'll do whatever we can to make you comfortable. And I think we proved this on this interview.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just want to just throw a word in there as well. Yeah, don't write and ask us the name of the person, because you're going to waste your time. Period.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. We do have to deal with people. One of the things with Two Average Joes, and I think all four of us in our agreement, we're never going to victim blame. So I don't want to hear that. She could have, would have, shit. Don't want to hear. Look, I think she's well aware, and everybody on this panel is well aware that she's lucky to be alive. She knows that. We don't victim blame, and we try to give everybody the space they need to be able to talk to us.
And one thing you got to remember, back in the 70s, it was a whole different time. I mean, things were so different than they are today.
I'm going to put a link in there in our thing where when Robert and I first started talking about true crime, we did an entire episode on that. Okay. It was a different world. And me and Robert kind of felt like when we did this, even with dealing with the John Norman Collins stuff, people hitchhiked. People were free. They went to parties. They didn't do things like that. So don't put that 2024 you know, voodoo on it. You know, this is the way
Right.
people act in the 60s and the 70s. They were not thinking like that.
Deneen, how old was she? Was she 17?
She was 17 years
Yeah.
old.
And she
Yep.
was thumbing, right? She was looking for a ride. She was out
Right.
basically thumbing for a ride.
Going
And
to see her brother.
yeah, and in Owosso, right? Was it Owosso?
I think her brother was up north around Traverse
St.
City.
John's, right? St.
She was
John's.
in
St.
St.
John's.
John's, so that's not
Was
my
in-
town.
She was going to St. John's, I think, from Owosso, right? And she got picked up. And this is very similar to John Norman Collins's MO. That's what I wanted to point out, that, and also he was driving an international, kind of like a Ford Bronco. Does anybody recall what kind of vehicle it was?
International Scout 1972.
So that's relatively new. So he must have been making some money.
Well, he wasn't. He stole the plates because when the police ran the plate number,
Mhm.
because she memorized that plate, she kept on saying it over and over again in her head,
Which-
and he ended up running the plates, and it was a plate from Detroit.
Unlike most people that got out of prison, Gerald got a really good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a really good job. Yeah.
High profile
Uh,
computer job when no one had a computer job.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's also important to mention when you watch the segment with a true survivor that's coming up here, you're going to notice a map that shows an area where I believe, according to what she's talking about, he was taking her to.
Mhm.
That was the area where the body of Dawn Magyar was found, who was murdered a year prior to this encounter. But what's interesting about that, when you start looking at serial killers and patterns and trying to establish similarities in cases, in this map, within a 27-mile line, there was Dawn Magyar, 1973, Pamela C. Hill, 1974, which is 5.5 miles away. Those two bodies were found. And then in 1999, 27 miles farther to the east, was the body of Ann Pates. So this is, Robert, another killing field within Michigan.
Yeah, and not to be a spoiler alert, but didn't Mr. Weingart get snagged in 2001 or 2 when they pulled out a cold case file and used DNA? Not to be a spoiler alert, but
Yes, that's correct. And it was on the body of, or the murder of Dawn Magyar, which is, and you'll see in the map, victim number 1. And I do want to say, I'm going to give a little shout out for a second if I could, because, you know, you're going to see here and there, you're going to see footage from a particular movie called An Ordinary Killer that's out of print right now. But soon we may be working a deal to have that come back out, right, Joseph?
Right. That is our ultimate goal.
Mhm.
One of many of our goals, but it definitely.
So I wanted to give a shout out to Anthony Hornis, who was the reporter during all of this. He went to school with Dawn, actually. They graduated together. And Tony and I was online last night for about an hour, and we were pinpointing exactly. So this map is exactly accurate to the point where Dawn's body was found. Now, I was there when we filmed the movie, but I didn't remember exactly where that was. So I just want to say thanks to Tony for taking the time to do that. And we'll probably hear a little bit more out of Tony later on as well, because he'll be able to help us in the Weingart segments.
Yeah.
he wrote a
And I
book,
think-
correct?
Pardon?
He wrote a book on this, didn't he?
He wrote a book, and then interesting story when they first started after Weingart in 1998 on the DNA deal. Tony was privy to the information. And he started writing a screenplay, and he completed the screenplay An Ordinary Killer within 1 year. And we filmed it the same year that Wingart was sentenced. And the day he was sentenced, we were filming in Owosso, the movie. So it's kind of interesting.
And for those of y'all guys, let me reiterate, movie, we're working on that one. So just let us keep working. A lot of things going on at 2 Average Joes.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we've teed it up. I think, I don't know how much farther we want to go, because
we had a couple more episodes. I think we've teed it up well here.
I think so. I don't want to, get to, because we could keep talking for probably another half hour on all the different nuances of everything, because there's a lot out there, and Dean is finding more and more of it. Seems like it's like peeling an onion. Every time we uncover something, there's 10 other things that we find. And the FOIAs, and that's what Dean was saying, and I meant to mention this to him in our pre-show meeting, but FOIAs are required to be redacted by statute, so they're not doing it on purpose. They're sloppy about it when they do it, because you just got bureaucrats basically blacklining this stuff, and they're supposed to take out names of children, addresses, social security numbers, dates of birth. So when you see something heavily redacted, when you send a FOIA out, but if you get it any other way, it's not redacted because it's not required to by law. So,
okay.
No, it's been interesting. But listen, kind of to close up on everything, going to be a couple more episodes on Weingard. So stand by. A lot of other great things and fun things coming from 2 Average Joes. And talking to somebody earlier today, and we were discussing whether it was jail reform or we were talking about true crime. We're going to send it to you straight.
yeah.
You may not like all the answers we have, but we're going to send it to you straight.
Right.
Sounds good. I'm going to, I guess, throw this comment, a special thanks to our true survivor. I think you're probably one of the bravest persons I have ever met.
Yes.
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 How unique and yet terrifying would it be to hear firsthand what it's like to be abducted? How scared would you be to find yourself in a car and then finding out you're alone with a convicted rapist and a convicted killer? What would you say? What would you feel? Would you be quick and begin to figure out a way to escape? Or would the paralyzing fear consume you to the point of numb? 2 Average Joes has taken a unique opportunity to hear firsthand the account from a true survivor. A lady who defied all odds, bravery, sheer nerve, and a will to survive. Let's go back to 1961, when a man from Niles, Michigan was convicted of raping a blind girl and robbing her boyfriend. This same man would walk out of prison in December of 1967 on parole, but free to roam Ann Arbor and the surrounding areas of southern Michigan. And yes, that's right, also during the co-ed murders of Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor. He later raped and killed a beautiful woman from Owosso, Michigan in 1973, a mother and a wife. Then, a year later, he ran into this woman, a true survivor, a fighter. 2 Average Joes brings you to her story, her account, her words, her fear, and her triumph.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deneen Azzolino for 2 Average Joes. Today, I have a very special guest. She is one of the 3 known survivors of Gerald Wingard. She's the one that got away. She's here to tell her harrowing story on that horrific day. Hi, thank you for coming and talking with me.
Hi. I was fine until you said that. Now all of a sudden I'm teary. Sorry.
Just relax. We're girls talking.
Yeah, it's good. It's all good.
Now,
Go
I
ahead.
just want you to tell your story and what happened that awful day.
I was 17 years old. I was living away from home with my boyfriend, husband to be. I was actually 3 months pregnant. Don't judge me. Um, I was living downstate in a little tiny place called Lennon between Flint and Lansing. And I was very close to my brother. He was a couple of years older than me, and who was living in Florida. And I had heard that he was home from Florida. And I hadn't seen him in a long time. And I wasn't getting along very well with my significant other. And he was gone all the time. And I thought, I'm going home. Didn't have a driver's license, didn't have a car. And we hitchhiked back in those days. And not the smartest thing, but we did. It was the norm. And I took off hitchhiking. And my goal was to get from Lennon west to St. John's and then take the highway up, because my hometown was St. Ignace, just on the other side of the bridge. So I got a ride to Owosso. It was early in the day. I was hitchhiking. And this turquoise colored International Scout, I don't know if you remember those, like a Jeep type of a thing.
Yep.
Pulled out of what I believed to be the police post. And I was a little scared because I thought, well, I don't want to get in trouble for hitchhiking, but it's a ride and maybe he's a good guy, trustworthy. Although I wasn't really all that worried about it because I lived in La La Land back then. I trusted everybody. Right. So he pulled over and I looked and he smiled and said, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going to St. John's. And he said, get in. And I was like, okay. And I had a little blue suitcase, those hard shell suitcases. I mean, it's been 50 years, So yeah, I had this little suitcase with some changes of clothes. And back then they had these little cards that you could write your name and address in and stuff. So I had that. I had that in my lap. And he asked me where I was going. And I told him, going up to see my brother, and he started looking at me and reaching over to my leg. And instantly I thought, this is not good. This is not going to be good. And my sister had always told me, my sister hitchhiked. And she told me, always keep a cigarette lit. And I didn't smoke much back then. I don't know where I got the cigarette, but she said, always keep a cigarette lit. And if they start giving you a hard time, put it out in their face and jump out of the car. And
never thought you would have to use that.
No. So I pulled out this cigarette. Maybe it was in my suitcase or something. Anyway, I pulled it out. And I was feeling nervous, trying not to show it. And I was digging for a lighter. Of course, I didn't have one. And he had one of those Zippo flip lighters. And he reached across and leaned over with the lighter. And he was rubbing my chest at the same time with his arm. And he kept pretending like he was going to light the cigarette, but he couldn't light it, which kept his arm in motion, Yeah. So I pulled back and I moved his arm away and he lit it. And I said, you can just let me out anywhere here. I'd appreciate it if you just let me out. And he said, no. And he started laughing. And I said, really, just stop and let me out. I'll be fine. And he's like, no, I'm not letting you out. And I said, why? and he just laughed. He had this creepy laugh. And his eyes were darting around. I don't know what that was, but that made it even creepier. And I said, please, why are you doing this? And he said, I'm going to kill you. And that put me in a whole different frame of mind. My adrenaline was going. And I said, why? And he just kept laughing. And I said, really, why? And he said, I've done it before. And I'll do it again. And I stopped talking. In my mind, I could see in my whole vision field, I could see a newspaper that they had found a body of this girl. And this is how my parents are going to find out. This is how I die.
Mm-hmm.
And he kept driving, and he kept looking at me and laughing. That laugh just, anyway. He said, well, where are you going in St. John's? And I said, I'm going to the gas station. I'm going to meet my boyfriend. I lied.
Yeah.
And he said, what gas station? I'm from St. John's. I know every place there. I know St. John's. I'm just going to the gas station at the corners. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so he turned right down this gravel road. It was a long ride. It seemed like it took forever. And when I look on the map, it really wasn't that far. But in my mind and in my memory, it seemed like it lasted a really long time. And as he started turning down that road, I said, where are you going? And he said, I'm taking a shortcut. And I said, there is no shortcut. And he just looked at me and laughed. He said, oh, yes, there is. And I thought to myself, I could see on the corner of the roads, there was a field there, and there were kids playing in the field. I could see these kids playing in the field. And I thought, if I can throw my suitcase out, it has my information on there, and they'll know where to look for my body.
Mm-hmm.
Kids will see me, and they'll know where to find my body. And I rolled down the window like I was going to throw my cigarette out. I still had that cigarette, so it wasn't all that long. I don't know how far it was. I was probably holding on to it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Rolled it down, and I'm watching him out of the corner of my eye like I was going to throw the cigarette, and I rolled it all the way, and I threw my suitcase out the window. And the kids started running. I mean, this happened so fast. And the kids, it was slow in my mind, but the kids started running towards us, and he slammed on the brakes. And I you know, he was probably, I don't know what he was thinking. I can't say what he was thinking, but something's not going right. Things weren't going his way. And then he just floored it. So he slammed on the brakes and then floored it. And I thought, in my mind, I can either jump and take a chance on living, because I know death, my death is there. My death is staying in this vehicle. He's going to kill me. And I opened up that door and I jumped. I don't know how fast he was going because it hurt. But I was 17, you know. I hit the gravel. You know, it's like I can replay that in my head. It's like I'm there again. And I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe after this I can start to
Heal.
Yeah. But I hit that gravel and hard, and it threw me, rolled me into the ditch. There was the ditch there. And I was going on my hands and knees and got up to my feet, and I just started running. And I turned around and he was getting out of his Jeep, and I thought he's coming after me. And I ran as fast and hard as that point I started screaming. I was screaming then. And the kids were running over to the fence. They were running. And the next thing I know, his door slammed and he was tearing out again. And I saw that license plate and I kept saying it over and over and over in my mind. That's what I was thinking. That license plate number. And I ran back out to the highway because we were a ways down that road. Ran back to the highway and I ran to a house and nobody answered. And I'm panicking. He's coming back for me. And I'm banging on the door. And nobody's there. And I kept looking to see if he was coming back. And there were two houses there. And I thought, oh, dear God, please let somebody be at the other one because I don't know where I'm going to go. And I'm banging, and this little sweet old lady came to the door. And I tried to tell her there's a man trying to kill me. And can I please use your phone to call the police? And she's like, sure, honey, come on in. Who does that? You know? Sure, honey, come on in. It's okay. It's okay. You're going to be okay. She closed the door and locked the door. And I called the police and I told them, you know, where I was, what happened. And they came. And I told him what happened, and I gave him the license plate number. And he said, he was very dismissive. And he said, well, came up on a blue Pontiac in Detroit. And I said, well, that was not a blue Pontiac. That was Aqua International Scout. And he said, well, that's all I can do for you, you know. And I was afraid that because I was out hitchhiking, that I was going to be dismissed because, you know, I was taking a chance of, you know, and I was. So, and then he said, well, there's nothing more I can do. And I said, please don't leave me here. He's going to come back for me. Please, please, can I have a ride home? And it was quite a ways, I don't know, 20, 30 miles. And probably closer to 30. Anyway, he said, nope, we're not a taxi service. And I said, please, please, he's coming back for me. I know he is. And he said, and I jumped in his car in the backseat. I wouldn't get out of his car. I was just mode. Anyways, he said, okay. He said, I'll give you a ride, but if I get a call, I'm going to have to let you out. And I said, okay, just get me out of here, you know. And I gave him my address where I was living in Lennon, and he drove me all the way home. He didn't get a call. I was praying the whole time, please, dear God, don't let him get a call and let me out. So I'll give him that. He did drive me home. And when I got home, my two brothers were knocking on my door. the brother that I was hitchhiking up north to see had stopped to see my older brother in Brighton, and they took his motorcycle up to visit me. And there they were knocking on the door, and they were like, "What are you doing in a cop car?" And I briefly told them, "Oh, I got picked up by this crazy guy and called the cops." I jumped out and called the cops, and and that was it. That was it. I never even told my significant other, because I left. That's when I left. I thought, I'm done. Had enough of this down here. And I took my clothes, and my brothers came back, got me, and we went up north, and that was the end of that. Which, of course, then my boyfriend followed me, and I ended up marrying the guy. So one bad mistake after the other. He's a good guy. Anyway, yeah. So I buried that for years, and I would still think about it every once in a while. I did tell my sisters, and later on in years, many years later, I told my kids when they were teenagers, don't hitchhike.
Learn from my mistake.
Yeah. If you ever need a ride, call me. I don't care what time of day or night, or call me. I'll come get you. Don't hitchhike or take chances like that. So I did tell them. But then a couple of years ago, a few now, it was really still bothering me after had 47 years. And I thought to myself, who was that guy? Is he still out there? Did he hurt anybody else? And I remember telling my sister, because she asked me what he looked like, and I said, I will never forget his face. I will never, in my mind, it is imprinted in my brain, and I will never forget his face. And anyway, I Googled murders in Owosso just out of curiosity. I mean, I'm in my 60s now,
Yeah.
And I saw Dawn Magyar's case. And I thought, oh my God, she looks a lot like I did. I mean, I was young. I had hair down to my waist. I had long, straight hair. Actually, I was wearing a brown leather coat and blue jeans, a jacket, and it just was sending chills down my back. And as I was reading this, I got to the bottom, and it showed a picture of him, and I almost passed out. I was like, I couldn't breathe. I was in shock, and it was him. And I thought, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, and that had happened a year and a couple of months before he picked me up. And the further I got into her case and saw where she was found, it was the same area that he was bringing me. That gravel road led straight to the township he left her in. And I kind of had a hard time for a couple of weeks there. I called my sister, who I'm pretty close to here, and and I told her about it, and she was like, oh my God, where is he? So I found out that he was in prison here in Michigan, Lakeland or something like that. And at that time, I wanted to send him a letter and say, do you remember me? Do you remember me? I had lost that baby from the jump, I assume. He was 5 months along, and I was 3 months. So within 2 months, it was about a month and a half that I lost that baby. So that was in the back of my mind. And I told him in my mind, I didn't tell him. I wanted to tell him that, how does it feel to see me get away? How did it feel? And then I thought, no, because if he ever gets out, even though I'm old and he's old too, and he's nuts, and I just didn't want to take that chance. I did contact the prison and ask him a couple of questions, and they were really nice. They were like, we can't share any information, but I did tell them what happened, and they said, well, we understand. They were really nice, and I said, I won't bother you again.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a nurse. I know you can't talk about cases and stuff like that, but anyways, so yeah, I never did. And then I was able to let that go. I just push it down and just close that door, and anyway, it started bothering me again, and I looked him up again, and I saw that he had been discharged. And I thought, how do you murder someone and get discharged? And I called. I'm like, is he discharged? And they said he passed away. And I said, so he's dead, right? Dead, not discharged. They said, yeah. So I was like, okay, thank you.
You must have felt a lot of relief, knowing that he is dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just the idea. It's hard to explain. I mean, the damage is done, all the horrible things that he did. And people live with that. But to know that he'll never be able to do it again, and he's not sitting in some jail cell laughing about what he got away with, because I'm sure he was. I can't even imagine that he would be. I don't think that he would regret. I don't know. That's my opinion. He was evil. And it still bothers me, when Dean got a hold of me. Well, shortly after all that happened, I saw this when it was kind of happening, and I saw this podcast on I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I saw that they did one on him, and I learned more about him and what his history was.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, this guy was more than I thought he was, And I wrote down a brief thing of my experience. I don't know why. But I did. And that was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And then Dean apparently had seen that and contacted me. It's funny when this comes up, you're able to bury these things, but then when it comes up, it kind of brings up those emotions again,
It brings it to the surface, and that's
Right.
when your healing starts.
Yes. But I would bring it briefly and then close that door again.
Yeah.
So this is the first time since that happened. Initially, I didn't do very well. I went into it was like a 4-day panic attack.
Yes.
And PTSD. But after we talked, and thank you so much for your kindness and your understanding and your laughter and making me laugh and making me feel comfortable, I feel really good. Didn't bother me a bit. I knew this was coming up and I was okay with it. At first I wasn't, with the regular meeting, but I'm glad it's you. Nothing against anybody else, but I feel comfortable with you, and thank you for that. And I really feel like the healing now has begun. I can put this behind me, and I don't mind talking about it anymore. Like, as you can see, I still got a little emotional.
Right. And you have every right to be.
Yeah. But I feel pretty good.
That's good. I'm happy I can be part of that.
Thank you. It's like I can leave that door open,
Yeah.
I'm not shoving everything down and anyway.
And always know that I'm here whenever you get that feeling again. I'm here to help you, no
I
matter what
appreciate
time of day, except for maybe the 5 o'clock time.
Right. Yeah.
But I
I've
am
been
here.
sleeping like a rock lately. I've been sleeping really well.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, things are good. I'm doing well. And I see it getting better.
That's good. And I'm happy I'm a part of that.
Thank you.
And I'm so appreciative that you were able to talk, because if this can help one girl from making a silly mistake and turning on those survival skills that you found. I mean, your
Yes.
sister did mention something to you, but they kicked in. There was a switch that came on, and you were able to use that ability to survive.
Yes. Had he been going down the highway, I would rather have jumped. And I know that's not any good advice or anything like that. I would rather have died that way than at his hands. And the opportunity was there for me, brief as it was, and I just grabbed it. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And it's all good now. I mean, it's good.
And look at it this way, you got a friend out of the deal.
Yes. I appreciate it.
No problem.
So if there's anything more you need, I don't know if was he able to get a police report? Did that officer make a report?
I don't know if he did. I'll ask him though when I talk to him.
I'm curious, because I never thought, I always thought, why didn't they follow up with that? Why didn't they get a hold of me? And since I've been talking to you guys, all of a sudden it hit me. I thought I was gone. I left. I was a minor. I didn't have my own, my name wasn't in the phone book or anything like that. There was no internet. And then I got married and changed my name. So but I wonder if he ever made a report about that, or if he just blew it off some young girl hitchhiking,
Right. It was such a different time back then too.
It was. Really was.
Up there though, I mean, in Michigan, so many things were happening then. I mean, not just Jerry Wingard.
Yes.
And it was, you had John Norman Collins, and you had it was crazy time up there.
Yes, it was. But what I was thinking is that, being as he had picked me up in the same area, and I was so very similar looking to her at the time, that why didn't he get that? It was a year later.
Right.
There was this murder, and a year later, I don't know. And then he's going to leave me. I don't know. Anyway, different time.
Yeah.
And maybe he didn't know about it. Maybe he was new. Maybe he was not aware of what was going on, But anyway, it is what it is.
Well, hopefully we can do some digging and find out more information. And like you gave me that info about Lacey.
Yes.
Francis Lacey.
that was very interesting. And that was just prior, probably within a week prior of Dean contacting me. And I had, I'm interested in that kind of stuff, especially in my hometown, my
Mm-hmm.
stomping grounds. And I had never heard of that murder
Right.
of Mrs. Lacey. So it was interesting to me, and I started reading it. And then as I got going, and the author started talking about who he actually suspected himself,
Mm-hmm.
and it was all these things that I knew had to be. It went about what was it, 1962, when he got the blind girl, and
Yeah.
and those were some of the comments that he made, and I thought, oh my God, I know who he's talking about,
Right.
and I did send him a quick message. I didn't go into it or anything like that, but I said I'm
Mm-hmm.
familiar with him, and I had a bad experience with him. But if you get any more leads or information, I'd love to hear about it, if it was him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was wonderful. So, I mean, yeah, anyways, it was, that was interesting.
Yeah.
So I can put him to rest.
Yes, you can. Dead,
Yeah.
buried, spit on the grave.
That's right. That's right. Yep. I'm not going to even waste a moment of my days anymore on him. So thank you
Yeah.
for that. This was actually meant to be. He doesn't
Okay.
haunt me anymore.
There you go. I'm happy I could be a part of it. All right. You take care.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.